All right, let's step back in time. We're going to the 19th century, right into the guts of the new industrial city. Now, this was a place of amazing progress, no doubt, but it was also a place of unimaginable filth and death. A crisis was brewing in the streets, in the very homes people lived in, a crisis of sanitation that was threatening to swallow everyone whole. And we have to understand it if we're going to understand how we fought it.
And look, this isn't some line from a dramatic novel. This is a real report from right in the heart of our biggest cities. This was the day-to-day reality for millions of people. I mean, just picture it, crammed into spaces that weren't even fit for animals, let alone human beings. The air itself was toxic. The conditions were the perfect breeding ground for disease. The stakes here, they couldn't be higher. This was life and death playing out on every single block.
So you have to ask, how in the world did we get here? Well, it all starts with this idea of the exploding city. The Industrial Revolution kicks off and it promises work, it promises a new life. And so people came, they flooded in, hoping to grab a piece of that promise, whether it was in a factory in Pittsburgh or a meatpacking plant in Chicago. But that promise, it came with a terrible, hidden cost. I mean, this image just captures the sheer chaos of it all. The cities grew so fast, nobody could have planned for it. There just wasn't any infrastructure to handle this tidal wave of people. We're talking no real housing, no sanitation to speak of, no clean water. Every single person who showed up for a job was just another drop in a bucket that was already overflowing, creating a disaster on a scale nobody had ever seen before. And this brings us to the absolute epicenter of the crisis, the tenement building. If you want to understand the sickness of the city, you have to go inside. You have to see how its poorest citizens were forced to live. We have to see, just as the reformers back then demanded, how the other half lives. So there was this one guy, Jacob Riis. He was an immigrant himself, and he knew poverty firsthand. He decided he was going to force the public to finally look at what they were ignoring, and he used this brand new, shocking technology to do it: photography. He'd go into the darkest, most dangerous slums, set off these blinding flashes of magnesium powder, and burn these horrifying images right into the public's mind. A picture like this one of Bandit's Roost, it wasn't just a photo, it was an accusation. Just let that number sink in. 800 people on one single acre of land. Think about that. In a time before antibiotics, before we even really understood germs, that kind of density wasn't just unpleasant, it was a death sentence. It meant that one person's cough, one case of cholera, could rip through the entire community like a forest fire. There was no escape. There was no social distancing. There was just shared air and shared sickness. So what specifically made these buildings so deadly? Well, when you break it down, the anatomy of a tenement is just a laundry list of failures. You've got awful ventilation, so sick air just lingered for days. Plumbing was a disaster, if it existed at all. No running water for cleaning or drinking, almost no sunlight, and the structures themselves were these rickety wooden fire traps just waiting for a single spark to go up in flames. Rice's words here, they're just searing. He perfectly captures this shared danger. The sink, right? A thing that's supposed to be for cleaning, is put out in the public hallway, and its disgusting smells become a poison that everyone has to breathe equally. It's a really grim metaphor for the whole experience. A shared space that doesn't spread community, it spreads contamination. But the problem, it flowed far beyond the tenement walls. The buildings were really just the containers for the people. The true enemy, the unseen enemy, was the mind-boggling amount of waste, this torrent of filth that millions of people were creating every single day with absolutely nowhere for it to go. It's such a simple question, but it's a horrifying one when you really think about it. Every single day, tons and tons of garbage, of human sewage. In our world, a truck comes, a toilet flushes, and it all just disappears. But back then, what happened to it all? Where did it actually end up? The answer is as simple as it is catastrophic. It just got dumped. It flowed into open sewers that ran down the middle of the unpaved streets. And even worse, it was channeled directly into the same rivers that people were using for their drinking water. They were, quite literally, drinking their own poison. And that direct line from waste to water leads to the inevitable, tragic result. The city started to reap what it sowed. It began to harvest its own dead. Not from war, not from famine, but from these invisible enemies that were lurking in the water and the air. Cholera, typhoid, yellow fever. And this chart really shows that these plagues weren't a one-time thing. These outbreaks happened again and again. I mean, look at Memphis. It gets hammered by cholera, and then just a handful of years later, yellow fever comes through and devastates the city. These epidemics became this recurring nightmare, a brutal price that was being paid for the sin of living in filth.
And Riss, he just brings us crashing back from the big statistics to this one single heartbreaking tragedy. He says the child is dying of measles, sure, but then he says something crucial. He doesn't blame the disease. He blames the bedroom. He blames the dark, damp, airless room that gave that child's body no chance to fight back. The environment itself had become the killer.
50%. I want you to just sit with that for a second. 1 out of every 2 children born in a city like Chicago in the 1880s did not live to see their 5th birthday. This wasn't some distant, undeveloped country. This was one of the most modern, dynamic cities on Earth, and it was killing half of its own kids. Things have gotten so bad that doing nothing was no longer an option.
And so, out of this complete despair, a movement was finally born. Doctors, reporters, regular citizens, they started raising their voices. It was a call to arms, a demand for something they called sanitary reform. The message was simple and it was clear. We cannot build a modern society on a foundation of human waste. We have to act, and we have to act now. One of the most important ideas that reformers came up with was this new kind of public official, this sanitary inspector. Think of them like soldiers in this new war on filth. This wasn't just some friendly advisor. This was an officer of the city who had the legal authority to walk into any building, inspect it, and, this is the key part, actually enforce health codes to protect the public. So their plan of attack was basically a 4-pronged assault. First, you change the laws. Mandate that every home has to have windows, has to have airflow. Second, you start a massive public works project to build comprehensive sewer systems to finally separate human waste from drinking water. Third, you create a board of health that has real teeth, one that can give its inspectors the power they need. And fourth, you use that power to hold landlords and polluters accountable. This right here, this was the blueprint for the modern, healthy city.
And you know what? By and large, it worked. We built those sewers, we passed those laws, and our cities became immeasurably safer from the plagues of the 19th century. The fight for sanitation was in many ways a huge success, but it does leave us with one final nagging question. We fought the filth we could see in the streets, but have we ever truly cured the root causes, the deep inequality and the poverty that forced people into those dark bedrooms in the first place? Well, that's a question that I think we are very much still wrestling with today.